Hello, I'm Irene Pletka. I'm the Vice Chairman of the YIVO Board of Trustees. This is my sukkah. Welcome.
And I'm Eddie Portnoy, Director of Exhibitions and Academic Advisor at the YIVO Institute. Welcome to YIVO's Sukkot Around the World. Irene, tell us about this amazing sukkah.
This is the story of my life. These are all the places around the world that my husband and I lived. The family tree has all of the photographs of the members of the family that we have that are extant. There are Australian birds hanging here, things that remind me of all the places that I have lived and that I have loved.
Thank you for inviting us into your sukkah, Irene. What do you have in store for us?
So we're going to take a trip around the world. We're going to hop into the kitchens of 4 different chefs who are going to prepare food from their culture. We've invited a group of special guests to come to the sukkah and taste these amazing foods and tell us about it.
First up on the menu is Joan Nathan preparing an Italian midnight snack called mascanode.
Let's go.
My name is Joan Nathan, and I'm at my home in Martha's Vineyard preparing a dish for Sukkot. It's a dish called mascanode, and I learned about this dish from the late Etta Survey-Macklin, whose town, La Pitigliano, called the Little Jerusalem in southern Tuscany, I had the privilege of visiting last spring. And this was a tiny town where at one point 50% of the population was Jewish, and it was an ancient town. Jews had lived there for a long time or had fled there when they had to leave Rome. Anyway, it's the kind of thing I love to find, and I'm delighted that YIVO has asked me to do this dish today. I'm going to take 2.5 cups of pasta, of flour, and Etta Survey-Macklin says to use not the 002 flour, which you can get. You can't. I'm on Martha's Vineyard right now, and you can't get that right here. Okay, so here's 1 cup of flour. Comes another cup, but you want it to be level. 2. And then 1/2 cup. Teaspoon of salt, and then 4 eggs. Or the difference between Jewish pasta and other pastas that very often you add water to it, but that means that there's not a lot of holding power. And Jewish pasta has to have holding power because very often it is made for the Sabbath, so you'll roll it and then you'll cook it again. Of course they did not in Pitigliano have a food processor, but we do. So you just do this. You don't want it to be sticky on your hands. You want it to be somewhat sticky, but not too sticky. And just put it, I like to use wax paper for this, and I just leave it for 1/2 hour. Okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna treat it very gently. You treat it really, you never press it very hard. And if you need, they put it on the rolling pin. You see how you just do this very, very thinly. Now don't forget, this is pre-pasta machine, this dough. And we're going to try to make it as thin as we can here. This dish could be Sephardic, could also be Ashkenazi, but it's probably Italian as opposed to many of the others. Well, the Italian Jews came to Italy, some of them before the destruction of the Second Temple. So they've been there a long time. I mean, I've met, especially in Tuscan, I met actually a lot of Jews this year. It seems weird right now making a dish from Pitigliano because the idea of any of us going anywhere is so bizarre. The thing is that these recipes that are made week after week for the Sabbath or for holidays really come through a generation after generations of Jewish people the world over. which makes my job so very interesting. So we're going to throw this in with the same time as a lot of salt. We're going to put in all of these for 3 minutes. So then you go like this. And then drain it again. Then you take each piece of pasta and you brush a little bit of butter on it, and you brush Parmesan cheese and sugar. I loved Sukkot when my kids were young, and we all would make this wonderful sukkah together. And I like it because of the concept of a harvest festival. I think that the more we have of harvest festivals, especially today, it brings families together. It makes us aware of what comes from the earth. And I think it's just a really good idea. Now, you know, this dish could very well have been a pasta dish, but it could also have been a dessert dish because of the cinnamon sugar. But my guess is it was a pasta dish, and it was a festive dish, one that was eaten maybe once a year. I think that this is going to be delicious and a little different. Okay, we're going to put a 350-degree oven for 20 minutes, and we'll see what it tastes like. It smells delicious. 20 minutes are up. Hopefully it's delicious. Oh, here it is. I can't wait to taste it, and happy Sukkot.
Oh, I love this.
This is my kind of
It's
style.
fantastic.
It's definitely
Oh,
delicious.
this is great.
Oh, yum.
Yum, yum.
So it's
Certainly desserty.
but then the Parmesan cheese kicks
Oh,
in.
God, true.
This is a Sukkot midnight snack. As you may or may not know, that's a tradition to sleep in the sukkah. So this would be what you ate before you hit the sack.
I have to say, when you're in the sukkah, sometimes you just want to go inside, and this would be an incentive to keep me out into the sukkah.
Definitely.
Until midnight or later. I love how the pasta is so almost sour, or like buttermilky tasting, and then the sweet filling is like such a good contrast.
It is like Italian blintzes.
The aroma is wonderful because you get a very strong sense of both the savory and the sweet. The Parmesan wafts
Yeah,
up
the
at you,
Parmesan's
but of
coming
course
through.
you can smell the sweet.
And the Parmesan hits you in the back of the mouth. That's wonderful.
The Parmesan definitely stands out, but besides that, everything else about it reminds me of essentially a noodle pudding flavor. It reminds me of something so familiar, and yet there's this one little exotic note.
It does remind me of my mom's noodle kugel a bit.
I was just about to say that, yeah.
And my
totally.
mom, sorry mom, she would put frosted flakes on the top to add a bit more crunch and sugar. So this for me is bringing me back to all the kugel times.
I've never had it with Frosted Flakes, but I will try that now.
I
so
recommend it highly.
Thank you.
But I do think it's more desserty than non-desserty.
Well, you know, as she said, it's a snack. And so snack you eat with your fingers.
Anything you eat with the fingers tastes better.
I would never think of like a midnight snack in the sukkah, and I have slept in a sukkah, and I think my friend brought Kit Kat bars as a midnight snack. So this is definitely a very
Very sophisticated.
Yeah.
I would say this is far superior to a Kit Kat.
I also love how, you know, on Sukkot, there's a tradition of welcoming in our ancestors, and the food of Patiliano is long gone. I mean, it's been hundreds of years since the community was thriving and even existent. So eating this kind of feels like you're bringing history into the sukkah in a really delicious way.
Yeah, food is so much about history. I mean, I think that people generally don't think about it that way, but you know, you're eating generations of development, and to bring something back can make it even more meaningful.
This reminds me of in Hungary, where my grandparents are from. They used to travel to Italy because it was so close. In Hungary, there's a dish called palacinta, which is a rolled crepe, and this brings me back to exactly that. I think it's really interesting that like cross, I don't know,
That hybridization.
Yeah, exactly. This is pretty stellar. I'm gonna make this at home for sure.
Yeah, all the more reason to celebrate Italian sukkah.
Yeah.
Italian sukkah, I know. It's at the top of my list now.
All right, next up on the menu, we have Beejhy Barhany of the Tsion Cafe in Harlem. preparing Ethiopian collards, or gomen as it's known, along with injera, the delicious Ethiopian bread, which is a traditional Sukkot dish for Ethiopian Jews. Take it away, Beejhy.
My name is Beejhy Barhany. I am the owner of Tsion Cafe, an Ethiopian Mediterranean restaurant located in Harlem, NYC. We're all about harmonizing and celebrating Jewish diversity throughout food. We're going to go through the process of the different ingredients that we have to make the Ethiopian gomen hamli for the Sukkot. So as you see, I have my beautiful seasonal collard green. In Ethiopia, we call it gomen or hamli. Around the harvest time, people will go in their backyard, in the garden, and just collect a few pounds, I would say, and basically dice it, cut it. We have the garlic here, a little bit of ginger. We're going to cut it and peel it as well. And about 2 yellow onions, medium size. You can definitely cut the edges of the collard green, but you're going to dice it nice and small. I mean, it's going to take us a little bit. You guys might need to pitch in to help to cut it. Collard green is it's nutritious, it's green. The way we cook it, it's vegan. I don't cook it with butter, with canola oil, and it gives a vibrant color to your table, to the menu. Traditionally, as I said, this is found in the wild, so you don't need really to go to the market and buy it. And it's organic, and is available free from nature, so it's delicious. You basically take your onions, cut it, in quarters or so, and I'm gonna peel my ginger quick. I don't need much of it, maybe half a teaspoon, and all of that goes to the blender. See, almost there. Yeah, this is what you basically want. I'm gonna dump it in here, nice and smooth, all of it together. So we're gonna take a medium pan, and then you can add your half a cup, quarter cup, according to your liking of oil. You can do it with olive oil, you can do it with canola. If you want, you can do it with butter as well. I keep it vegan, simple. I cook with canola oil, add my onion. Because of the garlic and ginger, it might turn a little bit kind of green, yellowish. That's when you know it's cooked well, and then you can add your collard green. So for now, we have to let it sit and cook nicely for about 10 to 12 minutes or so. From the first time, the color, it was very white, now it's turning kind of green. So we're gonna take our collard green, add it here. It looks like a lot, but volume-wise, it's gonna shrink. And we're gonna let it cook down. You don't need really to add water. And now is, I guess, the time to season it. We're gonna put our salt and pepper. It's according to your liking. I think this is enough. I'm gonna take some cumin and a little bit of nutmeg for the nice aroma. We're gonna mix it nicely. It's so simple, it's just a collard green. I will cut a little bit of injera. You can enjoy it with injera, rice, or by itself. And we're ready. Basically what you do is you rip off the injera. As an honor of a guest that is coming to visit us, we'll give them the first bite. And here you go. Enjoy.
And we just
Into it.
dig in with our hands? Is that
Yeah, so if you've never eaten with injera before, you just unroll it, tear a piece off, and
Pull
it
and
becomes your
tear.
utensil.
I've had collard greens in the United States, but it doesn't taste anything like this. And this has got a sort of fresh zing about it, and this spongy bread is just
so it goes so well
good.
with it.
It's so good.
Delicious.
I love the ginger coming through. I've seen Beejhy cook a lot before, and her use of ginger is, it's not subtle, and I love that. I love that.
I'm someone who craves greens, and cooked greens in particular, which you don't see so much in America. The thing is, to make them delicious, the lemon makes a huge difference. And of course, lemon does change the color of the greens, but here it's expected. You know, the bright green becomes another color, but it also adds a huge brightness and flavor.
Yeah, it's super flavorful. I like how you just scoop it up too.
So it doesn't taste at all like spinach. It doesn't taste at all like cabbage, even though it's a brassica. It doesn't taste like broccoli. It's got a singular taste.
Of its own.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's delicious.
As Americans, we think of collards as something from the American South, particularly in African American
Absolutely,
traditions.
yeah.
And as our chef is of African origin, perhaps there is some connection there between the African cooking and the traditions and tastes and habits and ingredients that we know in typical Southern African American cooking.
For sure, for sure. Michael Twitty, a friend of Yivo actually, who's a black Jewish writer, he had a book called The Cooking Gene where he really investigated the roots of African American cooking in Africa. And a lot of these flavor pairings, a lot of these style of cooking was brought over by the know-how from slaves brought over from Africa.
Peter, have you ever made injera before? I've never made it, and I'm not even sure exactly how you do it.
What's interesting, and particularly for this COVID moment, right, is that it's basically a sourdough base. So everybody who's been doing their bread projects, this is a good project too.
Yeah, they should do some injera.
Right.
This is my first time experiencing this bread. It's, when you unroll it a bit, it's a little bit like a sarrasin crepe, like the French make a buckwheat crepe. They also actually use a similar type of green, but blette, it's called. I don't know if it translates exactly to collards. And it would even actually stuff a crepe with greens as a savory crepe. So I think these things find themselves in very different iterations all over the world.
The beauty of the access that we have now to all these different cuisines is that we get to see the connections. We get to see that, in fact, we're just one big global family.
The points of intersection and the cooking that unites us.
Next up, we have Ron Arazi, who's a chef of Moroccan descent, who will be preparing a Moroccan fava bean soup. Ron remembers eating this in his sukkah as a child with his family. Take it away, Ron.
Hi, I'm Ron, co-founder of York Shuk. At York Shuk, we make Middle Eastern condiments and spices inspired by our culinary heritage of Sephardic Jewish cuisine. Today, I want to show you how to make a very special dish, which is fava bean soup with harissa and lemony tsarmela. This dish is very unique for me because every year all the family used to get together at my grandparents' sukkah in Beersheba, and we would all sit down on this sukkah, and my grandma would serve this really boiling hot, very rich fava bean soup, top it with the lemony tsarmela, and my grandfather used to make fresh pita bread for each and every person that came in the sukkah as well. The fava bean soup came from my Moroccan side of the family, from my mom's side of the family. Each and every family member of my mom's family actually makes that soup each and every Sukkot. I think what's unique about this dish is mostly the flavors that you get from the soup. It's very simple, yet it's very, very rich. And when you add on top of the fava bean soup the lemony harissa, it actually really booms everything up in your mouth. So, in order to make the fava bean soup and the harissa tsarmela, we're going to need dried fava beans. Now, there are two different types of fava beans. We're going to need the peeled ones. We're going to need turmeric. We're going to need minced garlic. And we're going to need salt and oil, harissa, obviously. And if you can get preserved lemons, which would be the ultimate for this dish, but if you cannot get preserved lemons, you can use fresh lemon juice instead. So let's start with combining all the ingredients that we need. We're first going to start with a little bit of garlic, some turmeric, and oil. And now we're going to put this on the stovetop just to get a little bit of aroma of garlic, and then we can continue. So we're going to start by warming up the oil with the garlic and the turmeric just until we get a very gentle sizzle. Once you smell the aroma of the garlic, you can actually add the fava beans and boiling water. Until we cover the fava beans completely with water. Give that a quick mix. And once it's boiling, we can cover and let it cook for about an hour and a half, 2 hours on low heat. What I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna transfer the cooked fava beans into a food mill. Now, if you do not have a food mill, you can use an immersion blender, but what we're actually looking for is a little bit of texture, so make sure not to turn it into a complete mush. As you can see, the fava beans are completely cooked and they are very, very creamy. We're gonna pass that through the food mill, leaving a little bit of texture. And what we have left to do right now is to adjust salt in case needed and to get the tzarmela ready. All right, now to make the tzarmela, we're gonna need just a tiny bit of garlic, not really, a little bit of oil, and the main ingredient, harissa, and of course, adding lemony aspect to the dish, which is gonna be preserved lemons. But again, if you cannot get preserved lemons, you can also add fresh lemons or fresh lemon juice. Mix the whole thing together. All right, now to plate the dish, we're gonna put 1 ladle of the fava bean soup. Don't forget that it's a very rich, very thick soup, so you really don't need a lot of it. A nice dollop of tzarmela. A little drizzle of oil, olive oil, of course. And the soup is ready to be eaten with fresh pita bread. Enjoy the soup, guys.
It's lovely. It's the proof that we begin to eat with our eyes when you see these contrasts.
That is so
Yes.
true. And you're just using
We're going to use this
A
instead
little
of our
soldier,
soup.
a little pita soldier.
yeah.
I love the like sunset swirl color
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah, the colors are great.
A nice citrus.
Wow, yes, this is delicious.
My mother said, a soup is not a soup unless a spoon can stand up in it. Look at that. Standing up, perfect soup. Wow.
So hearty. Like I feel like you could just have this and be full for the rest of the day.
The cumin is deliciously pronounced. Love the cumin.
Yeah, and that preserved lemon, it's really strong.
Yeah, the preserved lemon comes through for sure. Yeah, it's like the best lentil soup you ever had.
It is. It's amazing. and I always imagined harissa to be much spicier, but this just this boosts it in a different way.
Yeah.
It's not it's not sharp.
Yeah.
Well, NY Shuk, they make their own lemon paste and harissa. That's some of the products that they sell. And I remember the first time I tried their harissa, the flavor of jam came through. It had this very like complex kind of sweetness almost, like fruit leather or something, even though it was chilies. I like spice, but I don't like it that much. So for me to have a harissa that's more like flavorful than spicy really is
Right, it's
just
really
the right
nice.
thing.
But it's true that the peppers have so much flavor of sweetness and richness, and before the heat kicks in. So this is lovely.
It's definitely, I feel like, one of those things that you can just cook forever and you can never butcher it. Like when my grandmother makes beans or kidney beans, she would just like obliterate them, like cook them for like 10 hours. But they were still like translucent, like really savory, delicious. This kind of has that like effect for me.
To me, it's also the texture of this that is so special. That you have a creamy but certainly not ultra smooth texture. It's delicious.
It's almost too thick to drink, but I'm going to try.
Right. It's really very rich.
It's almost like a stew, don't you think? It's so thick. It's yummy.
It's beyond soup.
Yeah.
It's beyond soup.
When it first came out, I was like, oh, that's a very small portion, but I don't think you need much more than that.
Yeah.
No, you really don't.
You know, one of the beautiful things about these foods is they have limited number of ingredients because essentially you're dealing with a culture that didn't have enormous resources. So, but out of very simple ingredients, it makes
Look what you can make.
outstanding.
This is really nice. This doesn't taste in any way familiar as a Sukkot dish to me, but I feel like fava beans themselves have obviously a strong North African and Middle Eastern connection, but also part of a lot of Eastern European cooking too. And it's interesting that it didn't translate to the Americas. So I didn't really grow up with the fava bean flavor, even though when I looked through old recipes, the fava beans were there.
I think so often with people's or families' experience of Jewish cooking is that they tend to remain pretty much within their silos. If you have a family with Eastern European tradition or perhaps North African tradition, people tend to just have those things that they grew up with, whereas here we have this wonderful experience of cross-pollinating in one setting, tasting Jewish dishes from so many different regions. These are great discoveries for me.
Yeah, I think of Sukkot as being cold. I'm eating cabbage. I'm having, brothy soups, and this doesn't feel like that. And yet, I would love to eat this on Sukkot.
I would love to attend a Moroccan Sukkot to see how this is done.
Yeah, I think we just need more pita.
And finally, we have Yehuda Sichel, who will be preparing a Hungarian strudel for our dessert. Take it away, Yehuda.
Hi, I'm Yehuda Sichel, chef of HUDA in Philadelphia. For Sukkot, I will be cooking a pretty classic Hungarian apple strudel. I'm going to start with this strudel dough. So we're going to take 4 cups of all-purpose flour. We're going to add 1 egg. We're going to add half a cup of vegetable oil. It's about a cup of water. So we're going to let this mix for about 5 minutes on medium speed, just so we get the really nice smooth consistency. So I'm now going to just knead the dough by hand, just to get it a little smoother. That looks good. So we're going to let this hang out for about 15 minutes. So while that's happening, we will prepare the filling. I'm not going to peel these. I like the peel on it. It adds a little bit more texture. So I'm just going to take the ends off here. What I like to do is just kind of cut around the core. So these are ginger gold apples. They're kind of similar to like a green apple. They're not quite as tart. They have really good texture, great for baking. My grandparents were from Hungary, and they would certainly cook a lot. One of my grandmother's favorite things to cook was apple strudel. And depending on the season, she would use different fruits. In the summer, you could do like a nice peach one. When cherries are around, you can always do a cherry one. This is apple and cherry. Luckily, dry cherries are in season all the time. So once these are off, we're just gonna slice them kind of like yay thin. I could be wrong, but I think the strudel did originate in Austria, but the Hungarians definitely took it on. Instead of making your own dough, you can always use sheets of phyllo dough, which is definitely very accessible because you want like really thin sheets of dough. But the strudel is really all about the fruit. The dough is just there to hold it together and add some texture. Now that these apples have been cut, I'm gonna hit it with the juice of half a lemon. And that's gonna keep it from oxidizing. And also to give it a little bit more acidity, because this is gonna be pretty sweet. We're gonna add some brown sugar and a little bit of white sugar. We're gonna add some sour cherries. You could add a little cinnamon if you like, or even a little bit of allspice, maybe some clove. No matter what you add to it, it's gonna be delicious. We're gonna add the breadcrumbs. Okay, voila. So now we're gonna start rolling out the dough. The idea is to get it as thin as possible. So we're gonna start with just a little bit of flour, like that much. Like that could be even too much. You just want a little bit so it doesn't stick. So first I'll just start with my hands. Start to stretch it. And you always wanna roll from the inside out. It's a nice dough. It should look nice and smooth. So once you get to about here, you wanna let it rest for about 5 minutes. You just want the gluten to relax, and this will enable you to really, really stretch it, because we're gonna get this more than twice the size. Okay, cool. Now that this has set, I'm gonna take it and just lift it up. I'm gonna stretch it a little bit with my hands, and then it's gonna go down again. Now we're gonna roll it more. Now that we've gotten to about here, we are going to start stretching it with our hands. This is the exciting part. You kinda wanna come under it, kinda like a pizza, and with your knuckles, right? A little bit of flour on the knuckles helps. You obviously don't want to rip it, right? But you see how it's already getting bigger. Classically, you would put a tablecloth down and roll it up in the tablecloth because you want it the size of your table. And you really want to almost be able to see through the dough here. See how there's parts of it you could see through? Okay, so now that we've got it to here, we're just going to trim it up a little bit with the bench knife. All right, now we're going to take the fruit. We're going to put it all right here. So now we start to roll. Fold it over. You want to keep it tight. At this point, once you get it over twice, you kind of want to pinch this in. You don't want a lot of extra dough here because then you'll have it like undercooked. We have our oven set to 375 degrees. We are gonna brush this with butter. We're gonna egg wash it. So we're gonna go in the oven for about 15 to 20 minutes. It's starting to smell like an apple strudel in here, just like my grandmother's house. Now it's ready. Voila. So now, slice it. I like to finish it with a little powdered sugar. Voila.
It's really gorgeous.
It is.
I think this is a very proper representation of a Hungarian strudel. I mean, this brings me back.
It's funny for me, this strudel, it comes from all sides of my family because, of course, there's the Hungarian side, the Polish side of my family. That grandfather, when he landed in America, became eventually a wholesale apple broker. So he's on the inside and the other grandfather is on the outside. Then they both come together in this dish.
This is a traditional Hungarian Sukkot dish because of the nature of what's harvested then and what's available.
Of course, they're eating strudel all the time,
Right.
just changing the filling because strudel's so great, and then you work with whatever's in season.
And I believe in Hungary it's not called strudel, it's retes, right? It's got a different name, but strudel by any other name.
Everything is fantastic, even the crust. Even the crust is just right.
So you know how they make the dough for this? They stretch it on a table, on a tablecloth. It was rumored, and especially in Jewish households, in Vienna, I know, probably in Hungary also, that a girl was tested as to her marriage worthiness if you could read the newspaper through her strudel dough.
Love that story.
My wife used to make strudel at Savoy, at the restaurant that we had, and she would pull the dough in the dining room in between lunch and dinner service. And the front door had to be locked because cold air coming in then would seize up the dough, because you really want, once the gluten's built up in the dough, then you want to be able to have it relaxed and stretch so that you can get it to that complete transparent moment. So that was always this sort of moment in the afternoon. It's just like, lock down the house.
That's hilarious.
Susan's making strudel.
Strudel time.
I'm curious how this connects to the strudels of your childhood.
Well, I think that it's, as with any recipe, for some people there are rules, but there shouldn't really be rules. I think you can adapt things and make them your own. So you could make strudel with a pâte feuilletée, a flaky pastry. You could make it with a brick pastry. You could make it with more of a pâte brisée, as long as the apples inside are melt in your mouth and delicious. Every cook adapts it for themselves.
Many people make strudel with raisins. A lot of people don't like raisins. Putting sour cherries, dried sour cherries in there is delicious. It gives you that acid edge.
Acid. Really, really, really yum.
Eastern European pastry really lets the fruit shine because with a lot of Western European pastry, they laminate the dough, so they'll put a lot of butter into the crust. And this is just perfect balance for me because you've got this shorter crust that just is supporting the main event, the fruit.
Yeah, you can really see that the fruit is the bulk of the product here. Yeah, it's really delicious. Well, it's interesting to consider how this was made in, under different conditions in villages or in apartments and how that affected things. I think that people had to be, really on their toes in order to figure out how to get this, that sort of thing right.
Yeah. I also love the sour cherries in this. I feel like sour cherries to me is such a Hungarian ingredient. I mean, it's Eastern Europe in general, but when I think of the sour cherry soup in Hungary and the sour cherry cakes, I mean, it just really, it brings me back to Budapest the last time I was there, and which was a long time ago now. Someday we'll hopefully be able to travel there again.
Yeah, in the meantime, we have this, which is not bad.
No.
One of the things that's interesting to me, both about this dish and then about the fava bean soup, and probably even about the collards, is that so many of the Jewish dishes that become traditions are the food of the region. They're the food of all the people there Jewish and non-Jewish, so that you're Hungarian, you make strudel. You know, you're not going to make cheese strudel on a night that you're having Fleische, right? But they are foods shared by all peoples who live in the region. And I take great heart in that we can, our love of food crosses the boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
And divisions,
yeah, listen,
right?
it's the great connector. I mean, everyone loves to eat. And if the food is good, you know, what's not to like?
Yeah.
Right. What's to not like?
So Eddie, I have a surprise for you.
Nice.
I know you have a brother-in-law in Marseille who is of Algerian heritage. So I have made an Algerian couscous from Constantine, from his mother's recipe.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you. Let's have a look. Wow, this is amazing.
I tried.
This looks like it's from Constantine.
Smells good.
Wow, incredible. Can't wait to taste it. Okay, what we have here is couscous Constantine. This happens to be the recipe of my brother-in-law's mother.
Oh, wow.
My brother-in-law was born in Constantine, Algeria. It's not enough to say he's obsessed with this recipe. He spends a lot of time working on it when he makes it himself. Doesn't just require a couscousière to steam the couscous, but the sausage it's made with which is called the azban or the ozban. It requires a very delicate procedure. It's delicious. So why don't we give it a try?
And so the sausage, he makes the sausage himself?
He makes everything.
Wow.
He makes everything. And Irene made this.
Yeah, this is comfort food.
Yeah, this is big time comfort food.
I've never had, something like this with the sausage and the couscous. So, I mean, it's a pleasant surprise.
Right, the sausage gives it, that's what gives it the flavor. It's, it sits on top, it steams, it stews.
And do you know the meat that goes into the sausage by any chance?
Typically it's either lamb or beef.
So how does you said your brother-in-law?
Yeah.
How does he feel about this recipe going out into the world? And
so he was somewhat
shared?
reluctant to give it to me, although I pressured him, and he eventually did. And he did it on the condition that it would be made exactly according to the recipe.
My mom and my grandmothers, they're very reluctant to give me their recipes that are tried and true and they've tested. So I know that struggle of trying to pry the recipe from them, be like, share it with the younger generations. You need to pass it on.
When I've been there and he's made it, when he's agonized over it, it's you feel the love in the couscous.
Going as far as to like making the sausage yourself, I mean, that to me is such a reflection of love and also tradition that goes into this. So I would be proud of it if it was mine too.
Yeah, it's a labor of love. He loves doing it and he loves serving it, and pretty much everyone loves eating it.
Yeah.
So it's a great experience all around for everyone. If Sukkot falls late in the season, this is a perfect thing to eat in sort of a cool or cold sukkah, because you're essentially outside.
But I really respect your brother-in-law for sharing the recipe.
Yeah.
I mean,
I will let him know.
Yeah.
He will be happy.
Food is sacred, so.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you all for coming on this amazing journey in my sukkah. I hope that you found the food was delicious. I hope that you found that it was really memorable and exciting, and that you will try it. And I hope that you will explore what YIVO has to offer, because we do amazing stuff, and really we can't do it without your help.
Right, thank you, Irene. This was really, truly wonderful. Thank you for inviting us into your sukkah. And as Irene said, it's true. If you like what YIVO does, if you like our programs and our exhibitions and our classes, please consider donating. Please join YIVO, because we really can't do it without you. Thank you.
Thank you.